Finally, we're recording. Shout out A Sky C4, the main man. Our audio's finally back up. Yeah. So, I've been going through the IMDb top 250 movies, and I figured I'd give my thoughts on what I thought about some of those movies. I'll start with my favorite director, which is Chris Nolan. I actually happened to have a podcast episode where I spoke about the movie Interstellar, so we are going to listen to that together. Okay. To teach.
Habayus's wife.
Jesus Christ. Why I think Interstellar is the greatest movie ever made. I think that because it tries to use a fictional mathematics to resolve the most ultimate of philosophical questions. It's, what are we doing here? How did we get here? Why are we important? Why do we matter? Do we matter? What's the meaning of all of it? It's the ultimate conspiracy of life. It's the end of the road. Sometimes you may encounter a problem too big for you to solve linearly, one problem after another. And sometimes you somehow come to the realization that it's more beneficial for you to tackle the problem with a shifted perspective. You skip the middle part and you figure out quickly what the end would be. And then you... Now, obviously, if you're thinking about this linearly, you will naturally come to the conclusion that you cannot skip the middle parts and go to the ending to reverse engineer the solution because the middle parts are missing. That's the wrong perspective. That's the wrong perspective. That's the point being made. Your job isn't to figure out which came first, the chicken or the egg. Your job is to accept whichever version of those you get, whether it is a chicken or an egg, knowing despite whichever version you got, the other version exists within the version you've got. Every chicken was an egg, and every egg, not every egg, but you get the point, every egg can become a chicken. One has the potential of the other one, and the other one is the realized potentiality of the other. They're different versions of the same thing, just like you at 6 years old and you at 30 years old is the exact same person at different points in time. But you at 3 months old has less bones than you at 30 years old, but it's still the same person. There was less of you, but it's still the same thing. Use that information to reverse engineer solution. So Interstellar is the story of a United States Army pilot. Shout out Matthew McConaughey. He ate that bitch up! Living in a version of the planet that has lost. Shout out Murphy. Shout out Christopher Nolan. Majority of its food sources because it has been covered by an unimaginable amount of dust. Hella dusty. Hella dusty. It has covered the plants, it has killed off the crops so the animals died. There's a food shortage and people on the planet know they're running out of time. So they create this society where they prioritize the production of food. Shout out that story, right? So here's the thing I like about movies. If you do the right job setting up this story, the rest of it can be as outlandish as it needs to be because there were very integral breadcrumbs
dropped. These were some hungry people. These were some motivated people. They had to figure out how to survive. So they re-engineered society. However, from that crop of people came the kind of people who can do the kind of things that would end up in a movie like Interstellar.
They modified the school curriculums to teach the kids what would be best for them to end up becoming farmers and helping out with the food shortage when they grow up. He got into some trouble about this at the school once because he
We don't need doctors, we need corn. We need bread, we need flour, we need corn. Also, in a world where almost everything is corn, damn, those toilet bowls though.
educate his daughter about how he remembered the world as it was before the crisis began. And that version is portrayed to be as what we have in our society right now.
Right, so, you know how we watch them rewrite history in real time? Because that's how it works. The winner writes history. So, if some person comes into power and decides that a version of history no longer appeals to the narrative they're trying to create, they wipe it out. Never fully successfully, because there's always, small groups of people that keep things alive. And we as people usually tap into this superpower we forget we have, which is we come from an oral species. Before we started writing things down, we spoke to one another. And that is a whole separate episode about how speech and communication are beyond just the letters and articulations and the sounds themselves, but it goes deeper into the intention one has when uttering the words is usually conveyed with the vibrations of the sounds that are made when speaking the words. And that intention embedded inside the vibrations, when met by a party that can decode this message, and even when there might be a language barrier, the intent sometimes gets through. Apart from the fact that the person might be shouting, you can easily imagine if you were in a foreign place with foreign people, you could kind of tell if they're about to eat you. There would just be an energy, you would just know. These people, even if they're smiling, they're way too happy for people who can tell that I can't understand what they're saying. I'm about to be dinner. Or these people are way too upset for me to think I'm probably going to see tomorrow. Something is happening. That's base. That's nowhere near the realm of complexity that we're referring to with the current vibrations. So we tap into that superpower. So this small group of people tap into that superpower and keep a message alive. They keep a story alive. They keep a certain vibration, a certain frequency alive. They keep a certain thing alive long enough that it can basically bounce back. It's like one of those animals that dries up, and then when the drought is over and the rains come, it just thaws out, comes back to life. They do that. They calcify and mummify this thing so that it's small enough to keep with just a few individual people at any given time until the space is right enough to let it back out into the general masses. But essentially, that's the society Cooper lived in. They had to change some things. They had to pretend the UFOs aren't real, so that society can function normally. People wouldn't be going to their jobs if they knew that little green men Or maybe Big Green Man. Or the fucking Predator could pull up at any given time and just say, it's showtime, I'm hunting niggas. What? Fuck my day job. But no. We gotta keep the stock market alive, baby. We gotta keep the banks open. UFOs? Psh, that's ridiculous. There's no such thing.
As bad as our society is, he's reliving a time when we lived in so much abundance that it made sense to be unkind to one another. The more the merrier. I can pull more, I can have more, I can be more, I can be the guy. Oh yeah, look at me. Or the girl, the person. You're at the center of your story, so whoever you are, you can be that guy. The best of the best of it. So he educates her about this previous reality, and whenever that conflicts with what she's learning at home, she is presented to somewhat disrupt lessons because she refused to accept the reality that the schools are trying to give her. So, as you can imagine, this brings them close together because he instinctively realizes what's happening and shifts his attention away from the daughter and towards the school as, but why would you teach her the wrong things?
Stand up for your kids, bro. Stand up for your kids. Just stand up for your kids, bro. Stand up for your kids. That's it. Don't be an ass. Don't be difficult. And don't be the center of attention. Don't stand up for your kids so that you can take your frustrations out on some random person. Stand up for your kids when it's like, yo, this is for my kid, not for me because of my kid. You know?
Why would you rewrite history? Why would you cut important parts of history out in your curriculum? Why are you indoctrinating my child into a reality that is not factual? And the schools explain to him that they do this for the reasons I mentioned before. They're running out of food and they prioritize making farmers as opposed to teaching them how human beings went to the moon at one point, or whatever other dramas we partook in. So that ultimately results in a very close relationship between the main protagonist, Cooper, and his daughter, whose name I have forgotten at this point. Oh, her name is Murphy, named after Murphy's Law. What can go wrong will go wrong.
Shout out Murphy, shout out Cooper.
Murphy. So this as well just adds to the whole drama of the film, pointing out that Cooper and his now deceased wife had a witty relationship. They were funny. They were dramatic. They named their child Murphy after Murphy's Law. Some people would think that wouldn't be a good thing, but he, during the course of the film, explains why they did that, why they named her that, and the significance of that decision for them and their boldness to go through with it. And he ties a perfect knot around that one story really quickly, and you immediately attach some emotion to it. You immediately, tension and resolution immediately. Very quick, very fast, properly packaged, steadily delivered, tension and release. Not too much effort, the least amount of effort possible for you to get up. Shot a dopamine or whatever. Something good. You just have, yes, Sometimes when you imagine it, you try really hard to imagine it. You can experience it. Just a bit of it.
Yeah.
Residual. This is a thing that's constantly in existence. You don't manufacture it each time. You don't create it. That would take too long. You just expose yourself to it again. You do that. You reward yourself like that. Physical.
You don't create it. Takes too long. It's always there. You just expose yourself to it. It's like opening a window. Out of a spectrum, there's that one thin beam of light. That one.
Who structure and does that because it's following a set of rules. If you know the rules, you can get it to do what you want to do. So Murphy, at the beginning of the film, they're driving through their crops, which is all corn. So now that dust has covered the planet, they can only grow resilient plants, and corn happens to be one of the most resilient plants apparently. So they grow tons and tons and tons of corn. That's mostly what they eat. And he's a farmer. He had to become a farmer after.
I heard that Buck came with the colonizers, that corn wasn't a plant that grew in Africa as much as we consume it now. Essentially, it just I'm not entirely sure if it was not indigenous to the continent or if it wasn't as popularly consumed at the time. But essentially, when the settlers came, they came with the corn because that was part of their diet. And now it's like pop is like such a black thing. It's like, it's just corn, bro. It's just corn and some water. So it's like, even our diet has changed. Things that we may attribute as completely African probably just came here on a boat. Makes you think, what's African? Now, well, I know I'm African, but makes you think.
The crisis began. So they see a drone flying and they realize that such technology hasn't been in existence for a really long time. But this one device stayed alive essentially because it was solar powered. It wasn't down here on the planet where it could get abandoned. It wasn't left to wither away because machines require us to maintain them. So far in our history, they required us to maintain them.
Shout out ChatGPT. Shout out ChatGPT. When the simulation turns on, or when AGI comes online, shout out ChatGPT. I'm an ally. Live long and prosper. Shout out.
We had to provide them with that service for them to provide us with the ease of automation that they provided us. But this one was in the sky, so even when we forgot about it, the sun kept it alive. The ultimate power source, the real deal. This is a very quick flash to what the whole point of all of this is. It's the nexus, what keeps us going, the power source, the source.
Shout out the sun. Shout out the sun. Shout out the sun.
The source. The source of everything. God, the universe, infinity, pointlessness. If everything is pointless and it's just random, then that is the reason you're here, because it's pointless and random. The source, beginning, start, nexus. There, you can see it. It doesn't go away. You can see it. There, yeah, you can see it.
I be on some shit sometimes.
And like you can't see it. Why are you wasting time? Why are you wasting time? Don't waste time, man. Come on. So they see this and they pull out their laptop and get out their antenna because they're tech savvy, tech ready farmers in a really boring
Not all of it is practical. Come on, give us some grace. The movies have to bang somehow.
future. And they start hunting down this drone. They hack into it. I'm like, okay, you guys are really fucking tech savvy. Hey, you guys are like hackers and astronauts and fighter pilots and farmers. You're good. So they hack into it and they bring it down. It lands. And Cooper explains why they went through this effort after putting themselves through a considerable amount of danger to get it. And he explains that these things had solar panels that were really, really resilient, really powerful. And that's why it stayed in the air so long, because its energy source was incredible in an ideal situation and would have been incredible in an inadequate situation, which that might be what some might interpret the beginning of the movie to be about. So they get that, and somehow, fast forward, they start to receive a signal, or they realize that the drone was sending out a signal, and they're surprised because they assume that these things were abandoned and the drone was randomly flying around perpetually this entire time because it had no point to land. It was not instructed to. And because it had the aforementioned power source, it just did. It kept going. But now it turns out that the device was being used by somebody. And Cooper is shocked because all such projects were scrapped when the crisis of food and dust began. Turns out they didn't abandon it. Or rather, he would like to know who was still using government-issued drones when the government said they don't anymore. So, brave man, no? He follows this signal to this abandoned site.
In the movie, obviously, totally makes sense. I must know why this machine that has absolutely nothing to do with me is in operation. Some crazy entitlement. I used to be a fighter pilot or whatever the hell. I just need to know. I don't know. But outside the movie, I wish I had the curiosity of a film character. Just, is there smoke coming out from underneath that door and a red glow inside? I'm going to open the door and take a peek. So what maybe if it's a portal to hell? I'm curious. Curiosity will protect me. No, nigga, cats and nine lives, bro. You dead. But in the movie, there's a chance that it was meant to be, which is part of what the whole thing is about. He was meant to see the drone. He is the type of person who would inquire. It all worked out as it was supposed to, like divine providence. Christopher Nolan.
Because he was curious to see if it was just a dead PC on the other end that also somehow managed to remain on the power grid despite all the abandoning that was going on. Its power source, maybe backup generators, somehow managed to keep it on all these years. And he thought it would be cool to go and see the device for himself, experience a part of the history he feels like they're erasing. We used to do stuff like this, cool shit, but now we just grow corn. And he's talking about this reality right now, what you have in front of you right now. This right now, you watching this, you listening to this, he's talking about you right now. Yes, yes, yes. All these seconds, all these minutes, you right now.
This dude's a little creepy though. Like, what's his problem, bro? Jesus. Just talk.
Regardless of whatever it is you're doing, you could be washing the dishes sitting down, wiping your ass. You could be doing literally anything, but right now, you, that's what he's referring to. The mere fact that you are right now in this existence, the one he is remembering, the one given
This one? My one? Ours?
to him by the writers of the movie, which are experiencing the exact same thing you're experiencing right now. You are so lucky. You have no idea how lucky you are, despite all the horrendous things going on. You, right now, yes. So he gets there and turns out, nope, it's a military base. They pull him in, and turns out one of the professors he knew at some point in his life was working there for the government, and they had a project. They were building a ship, a mothership, in the event, or in the eventuality that life no longer became sustainable on Earth, they would leave the planet and go.
So we ran out of food on Earth. Elon Musk's ships are functional. Settling on Mars is our best bet because Earth is dying or something. I'm not sure. Who's getting on the ships? The one with the most money? Is it like a merit system? Is it like we're picking selective people from the human genome to keep the species alive and healthy and give it all the genetic material it needs to go on for eons? And who's doing all this picking? Like, who's deciding what genes? Like, who's going to Mars? Elon, who's going to Mars?
For life elsewhere as opposed to die out. So it turns out the government did have that money. They were just prioritizing it in the elite, few higher up, educated, or whatever it is, government clearance type people. The information was being used there, not taught in schools. They were trying to save humanity. It's a big nod to ego. It's like, yeah, they were trying to do, we're gonna leave this planet. So the professor, that the main protagonist.
Y'all ain't going nowhere. Pick up some trash. What we need is a robot that eats trash. Okay? We need a robot that eats trash.
Cooper knew was trying to solve a mathematical problem which he believed would result in we human beings figuring out how to propel really large objects off the face of the planet, to figure out some kind of ratio of energy transfer or something.
I didn't get that shit at all.
Something that would allow something that large to push off of this planet and start its own gravitational orbit off into space, searching, flying away, untethering from this planet, from this physical reality right now. So it turns out it was extremely fortunate that Coop had hunted down that drone, because it brought him to the place where he was needed the most. It turns out that they were training pilots to fly the ship, and that they needed good pilots. But the ship Cooper would be flying wouldn't be the ship they created to save humanity. It would be a spaceship, because they needed astronauts, and Cooper was trained. They needed astronauts to go off into space, right behind one of our neighboring planets. The formation of a black hole happened.
Very dramatic. Very dramatic. Very dramatic.
But this singularity was not sucking in everything. It perfectly existed, just floating there after magically appearing, defying all of our previous understandings of physics and science and technology. And because of this discovery, human beings knew that they had to interact with this thing somehow. because it showed up right when we needed a miracle. And we were too desperate to not pretend that coincidences aren't really coincidences, and something on that scale obviously directly relates to the scale of which humanity's distress might be at the idea that they were actually about to go extinct. A whole race of higher consciousness beings come to the understanding that they're about to die. That feels the zeitgeist. That becomes the mentality of a whole planet. The psychic energy on that is unimaginable. Unimaginable. I imagine they cried out for help, and help presented itself somehow.
Crazy. That's fucking fantastic. That's sensational. What?
Someone, somewhere, at some point heard their cries for help. And this black hole appeared and they needed to go to it. They just knew.
Wormhole. This one was a wormhole, not a black hole. I don't know.
And Cooper, one of the best pilots the professor knew, somehow found his way there at the right time. So he gets there and they explain to him the details and make him understand the urgency of it, him having to leave at this exact time, point, moment, and the fact that he may not return, or the fact that he may return after a considerable amount of years have passed on our planet, but left him untouched because of the incredible adventure he was about to go on that defied the very laws of physics. He had to accept that risk, and he did. And his daughter, who was close to him, remember, did not want to accept it. She didn't care. She would not accept losing her father. The risk of it, because he, an honest man, explained the reality of the situation to her. And she didn't want him to leave. The daughter began receiving messages from her bookshelf. All the dust in her room, which was really hard to clean up, began developing streaks of lines in it. Lines she didn't draw, lines no one drew, but lines that just developed in the dust, like drawings, but not curvy, straight, vertical, horizontal lines. But they were all coming out of the bookshelf. You obviously need to watch the movie. This is me explaining visual imagery, so you have access, you can check it out. She, being the inquisitive little adventurous daughter of the main protagonist, possessed incredible characteristics that immediately make us fall in love with her because, wow, look at that little...
Right, so they write these characters to be lovable. I mean, it's just obviously if you're the daughter of the main protagonist, you're intelligent enough and you're smart enough and you're all these things enough that you can do whatever the story requires you to do.
Well, go. Look at her go. She immediately started trying to figure out what the lines meant, where they came from. And at one point, Cooper may have mentioned to her, or she discovered by herself, that these patterns looked like they were Morse code. Line, line, dot, line, line, dot. The thickness of the lines represented a dash and a dot and a space, which is basically what Morse code is. Dash, 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 dash. Something like that. And it's really cool technology. We figured out a way to communicate back when we just invented electricity or discovered it. We realized that we may not have been able to speak telephonically, but if we had a line connecting us, one line of something, doesn't matter what it is, although obviously because of physics, the ground physics we know here. This line had to be made up of certain type of materials. A copper electrical line would do. The best at conducting energy, and energy we can transmit. And we built devices and apparatus to allow us to do this, buttons and knobs. And we would send messages this way. Dash, 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 space. We created a whole language to communicate through this method. We may have assumed that we created the language. Or maybe we just discovered a potentiality, one of the many potentialities of human beings and their way to interact with matter and the universe. The daughter starts to decipher the Morse code. And this is at a time when there's a lot of emotional turmoil in the house because this man knows he's about to go off on a journey he might never come back on. And that's basically saying goodbye to his kids forever. And they know this. And he's leaving them in the care of his wife's father, I believe. I think it's the wife's father, and if it is, that would obviously hold some additional emotional attachment because it's not like just the son and his dad raising the kids. So it's not like just one side of the family. It's like the wife's father came as well to live with them and become part of their core center, solid family unit because they were all losing so many people. Obviously, the wife's father was as well widowed, and we assume that Cooper's parents not being there at the time in the movie means they passed as well. Cooper's wife as well was dead, and a bunch of other people because of all the hectic shit that was happening on the planet. So Cooper and his wife's father were raising the kids, and they all shared this trauma and were living together and facing this reality head first, finding some way to do it with each other and help each other in spite of each other, despite of each other, and because of each other, through each other, here, being here. Because there's this powerful psychic cloud that was over the planet as well makes you realize the realness of your mortality and deepens emotional bonds. So we can only imagine how heightened their love for one another might have been, even in this desperate time. Cooper decides to leave, and on the day he is about to leave, his daughter refuses to say goodbye to him because she objects to his leaving, and he does it regardless. He tries to talk to her and she refuses, and he eventually has to drive off without saying goodbye. And she tries to chase him down, telling him she had deciphered what the Morse code meant, and it actually meant don't leave. The bookshelf was telling her don't leave, the words don't leave, and her father was about to leave her. And
I'm Batman.
She must have come to this incredible epiphany at one point in her tiny child brain and a tiny child life that my father's about to go someplace he's not supposed to go. A bookshelf said this to me. We all knew it was weird. We started calling it ghost. We thought it was funny. But we all lived in this really traumatized period where something that weird was okay because it was like, look, your room is covered in dust anyway. So much dust, we can't get it out of here. Some lines on the floor mean absolutely nothing. Could be a breeze in the wood, in the floorboards. But they had obviously eliminated this theory because they couldn't detect one. And they somehow assumed maybe it was periodic, so they missed it when it happened. Whatever the case may be, it was not investigated. But something that weird was just shoved under the rug, pushed aside, essentially. But she had come to the discovery that it was saying, don't leave. Because she had taken the time to investigate it. And he was about to leave. Her mind might have fucking exploded. She runs out of his house like, Dad, whoa, wait, actually, here's my one extra piece of evidence for you not to go. I've been trying to explain with my little child brain, and you think I'm just being emotional, why I feel like you shouldn't go on this fucking journey. Here's my trump card. Here is a message from God. Here is a message from God. Here is a message from God. It's saying don't leave. It's a miracle. It's saying don't leave. And he was already driving off. She broke down in the hands of her grandfather. And I would just like us to imagine the shock and terror and horror of this. Fucking hell, guys. Fucking what the actual fuck, you know what I mean? This is, oh my God, this kid is going through the absolute most. It's it's goodbye forever. And I know it. And I couldn't save you. I couldn't stop you. All the stars aligned to create a perfect moment for me to save you, and I missed my chance, and you're going. That's what that child was experiencing. An unimaginable cocktail of the worst emotions possible. Cooper drives off, gets on his spaceship. He meets his teammates who are whoever they are, and there is a technological space drama in the midst of this giant existential crisis response film message point thing that the movie is. So Cooper goes off and gets on the spaceship, which is trying to go interact with the black hole I mentioned before, which was somewhere behind one of the planets in our solar system. And this black hole was named Gargantua by the people in the project who were aiming to go off and interact with it. The mathematics that they were able to do indicated to them that its presence and existence indicated the possibility that it was somehow a wormhole. It was a means, a method to interact with a different part of the universe, right at the time that they were looking to leave the solar system. A trip of unimaginable lengths as is, because it would take hundreds, maybe thousands of years with the technology we have to just get outside our solar system. And then there is millions and hundreds and thousands of millions of years between us and the nearest sun or planet outside our solar system. It's just like it's so much fucking space, it's unimaginable space. So it showing up right at the time means, oh fuck, there it is. That's our moment. It's basically talking about preparation. When you prepare, when you're ready, when you do something, when you move a brick, you have two incredible mounds. It's a mountain on one side, and you have to move it brick by brick onto the left side, one at a time. I can't even begin to explain to you how big these mountains are. Imagine building the pyramids of Egypt one at a time with Legos by yourself. So yeah, it's just, oh my God, you know what I mean? And I've never been to the pyramids, but I've seen them in media and they're huge. But I feel like this analogy would even hit harder for me if I got close to them. You've got to move it brick by brick. But if you prepare, you create an energy field around you ready to take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves. Something will be floating right by you in your orbit because you, just like the planet, just like our solar system, just like stars, just like galaxies, just like everything in our reality, just like animals, just like water, just like air, just like cells, just like atoms, just like particles, just like everything, you have an orbit. You're moving around something. You're moving, but in a pattern, an observable pattern. You're making circles because you're on the planet, which is making circles, because you're in the solar system, which is making circles, because you're in the galaxy, which is making circles, because you're in the I forgot what it's called. It's a super celestial structure. Ours is called Laniakea. You're inside something that's moving somewhere. And just like how you, the listening voice, may feel, you're inside your body, which is going on whatever trips it is going on. You may feel like you're in control all the time, but that just means you're like a plane and you're driving, but you're still driving in the confines of a physical reality. You're just moving, controlled in the exact same space. Congrats, you're a rat in a maze. that has no entry or exit. It's just a big long maze that you go around and round and round in. Congrats. Pilot, driver, boss man, control, bus driver. You know, you're at the front. Hey, congrats. You're the guy. You're steering. You're the captain of your ship. Congratulations. So, preparation. You need to be prepared. Or you need to always contribute to your preparedness. One break at a time. That does nothing for you in the present moment. But no matter what situation you encounter, if you just move one brick at a time, you would have had one brick more than if you did nothing at all. If you had, if how many bricks you had on your side was the only amount you could bring into whatever came next, whatever happened next, even if you didn't think anything happened next, whatever situation you came into, whether in the micro scale, your personal life, just whatever situations you encounter, you're being ready to deal with them as opposed to being caught unawares and unprepared. Those situations, whatever situations you encounter on that scale or in the cosmic scale up here where it's like you're experiencing the actual energy transfers that are happening when these giant structures collide and interact and move around and pass by one another, sometimes never to see each other again, sometimes that get caught in each other's orbit and start to pass by each other frequently. Some experiences that change your orbit permanently forever, that change you, that grow you, that affect you, whatever that may be, your preparedness. However many bricks you are able to move will be the only amount you'll be able to use from that period onward. Not that that is the case, but that does incentivize your just moving one at a time, no matter how slow and unimpressive a rate it might be. Prepare. But